Hey everyone, welcome to a very quick video. I was able to get a hold of Jimmy Song this morning. He's very busy. I'm not going to be able to get him on my show for the next couple of days, but hopefully he'll be back in the morning. And I wanted to just clear up a couple of things about Lightning, mostly for myself. But if I don't understand something, I usually have this impression that the majority of people, especially my followers, don't understand something either. And this goes back to something like we said in that kitchen car talk video, where again, like when you do you have to realize that when you do videos like every single day, sooner or later you're gonna say something stupid. Okay, so keep that in mind, that when you have like hundreds and hundreds of hours of video that's public, there'll be 3 minutes where you say something dumb because of a slight misunderstanding. So the misunderstanding that I would like Jimmy to help me clear up is the difference between a Bitcoin node and a Lightning node. And the problem happens with this. When I assumed that using Lightning is going to be insanely easier than using a Bitcoin node. Setting up a Bitcoin node, while it's not crazy difficult, it's difficult enough to the point that it's a bit annoying, and it requires you buying hardware and setting it up and then using it and then messing with your router settings. There's a lot involved. It took me over a day. It probably took me about 12 hours of work to set up a Bitcoin node. And I really hope using Lightning does not require this kind of intensity. So maybe Jimmy can help us explain that.
Yeah, and that's a really good concern, because you do need some technical expertise to be able to set up a Bitcoin node, and you do need some technical expertise, at least right.
Oh no! Oh no, Jimmy, your internet. This really is a Bitcoin car talk. If this is how we end it. Oh man. We lost Jimmy just when he was about to give us like the answer to like how to solve all of your transaction problems. Oh man. Or is it me? I don't know if it's me or not. No, it's Jimmy. All right, we're gonna have a much bigger episode. That we're gonna have a much longer episode on this. But look, the idea I wanted to present is I wanted to explain to people that setting up a Bitcoin node is not. Oh, there he is.
Oh yeah, sorry about that.
Oh man, that was hilarious. Just as you were about to give us the technological solution to all our problems. God.
Yeah. So I'm on Wi-Fi. I have to hook in the wired stuff. I just moved. You can see the background's a little different. And yeah. So anyway, you're absolutely right. There is sort of like a technical hurdle in order to set up a Bitcoin node. And it's the same for Lightning right now, except for like having different hardware and stuff like that. Although you do need your own machine at the moment to set up a Lightning node. And that's a very valid concern. And the developers of Lightning have set it up that way because it's alpha level software. They don't want that many people on there right now because, people might lose their money, and that's just being responsible. But yeah, the only real difference is that with Lightning and Bitcoin is that with a Bitcoin node, you do need a lot of hardware if you're going to run a full node. At the very least, you need like 10 to 15 gigabytes of space. That's a pruned node. And with Lightning, you don't need that much space. So the hardware requirements are significantly less. So eventually, you should be able to run it on your phone. But I mean, like that's a perfectly reasonable misunderstanding. I mean, are you really going to know the exact node requirements of something that's new? I doubt very few people do. I don't even know right now. I know I can go and install it, and my computer's probably good enough to handle it. But the actual exact requirements, those are not easy to find out. And only really the stress testing it is going to let you find out. But that said, like, I mean, Tone, when we were doing that show, I think you were thinking that there was a Lightning node and that you could sort of connect to it and communicate with it, which is a perfectly valid sort of way to use it as well. And that may come in eventually as well, is that you can have a Lightning node and some sort of like communication with something that's online all the time. And that's sort of, what he was thinking. A lot of people are sort of, making fun of us or whatever, saying, you don't really understand Lightning. I think it's just sort of like one or two misunderstandings here or there, or like thinking that it's one thing and not something else. And I don't think Tone was even that incorrect. Like there's a way to run a Lightning node and communicate with the Lightning node directly, so that you're making the Lightning node do what you want, and like sort of controlling it on your own. Is that possible as a third party? Probably not. But I mean, who knows? There's probably an entrepreneurial opportunity there if you want to run it as sort of like a third party service. It's just kind of ridiculous how many people are going out there and talking about this right now.
And the thing is, and those people know even less than us, right? And that's kind of the frustrating part about it. Like I got a lot of crap for that statement from the beginning, like even like immediately. And the thing is, like, and those people know even less. But I think the confusion is going to come because I've already fallen into the trap of confusion and, using the word node for too many purposes. Like I think using it for like a Bitcoin node and using it for a Lightning node, just a wording notation is going to, I think cause some problems. Like I really wish that the community would name, instead of Lightning nodes, named it Lightning something else to kind of differentiate it from a Bitcoin node, like come up with another word, like maybe a Lightning vertex or Lightning something, because they're not the same thing. They are going to be pretty different. And I'm hoping that in the future, it's going to be seamless. It's not going to take a person 10 to 12 hours and a mathematically and computer inclined person to set one of these things up. I'm hoping that it would be as simple as an HD wallet, maybe a little more complicated than that, but basically kind of like creating an ERC token, which apparently a 12-year-old can do. So I'm hoping that setting up your Lightning vertex or wherever, I'm hoping that the notation changes. I'm not going to try to push the narrative that much, but I'm hoping that it would be as seamless as an ERC20 token, which I also don't even know how to do because I've never even thought about doing it, but it seems to only take 5 minutes, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the first, like I haven't downloaded the Ethereum stuff and gone through it, but apparently that's the very first thing that it helps you set up is creating your own token. Like as a developer, it's literally like they have a template and you fill in some stuff.
Right. So
that's it.
That's what I'm hoping to go. People are trying to say, how about Lightning Hub? And I think I don't like the word hub notation because that implies a bunch of people, right?
Yeah,
but
so they mean something very specific. So node comes from graph theory, and if you studied graph theory in college or something like that, you have nodes and edges, and that's kind of where it comes from. And basically, channels are the edges and nodes, and engineers aren't like the greatest at naming things, right? They just like to name it as descriptive as possible. Lightning node is, you have payment channels, which are sort of like the edges of the graph, and you have nodes. Vertex might work, some sort of like, I don't know, peer, maybe Lightning peer, or well, it's not really a peer. It's actually at the end of a channel. So nodes, like, it's confusing because Bitcoin node also, Bitcoin network is a graph as well, but it's the edges are not Lightning channels, and they don't have that sort of quality. Lightning channel, the payment channels in the Lightning network are a lot more important than, say, the edges on the connections in the Bitcoin network, because you can drop any one of them at any time. With the Lightning network, those edges are a lot more critical to
they need to be there a lot more permanently, right? Because if you're Lightning, oh God, I really don't want to call it node. If your Lightning vertex drops, there could be money lost.
Yeah, and you have to open and close them in a very specific way. Whereas like with a Bitcoin peer-to-peer connection, you have you can drop them at any time. It's
Right,
fine.
and they
It
are
doesn't really
completely
matter.
different, and that's what scared me. Like when, well, I'm not sure when you said no, you have to create your own, and
Mhm.
using the word node, I'm like, crap, I don't want to be responsible. Like I'm not even sure if I'm properly responsible for my Bitcoin node. I had a huge problem opening up, port 8333,
Mhm.
and I had a huge problem, and I'm last time I checked, I know I did everything right. And still, when I check my IP, it says that like I'm not connected to the network, and I gave up trying to figure out why.
Yeah, and there's like additional stuff like routing stuff over Tor and things like that that you
Yeah, it
can do
was a, it
remote.
was it was a giant mess, and
Yeah, it's not easy. That stuff is not, and that adds privacy and things like that. But it's not easy to set up, and it's kind of like that because there's not that much demand for it. There isn't as much development power to making it super
more
easy
user
to set
friendly.
up. Yeah,
It really
but
good.
but that's okay. Like we're still in the early days. I mean, like like user friendliness will come, and there's money for entrepreneurs if you can figure out how to do it in a really good way.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, like there are people that don't understand consensus that are
Yeah, that's where
complaining
I
about
wanted to get
this.
to. Like, we got you for about 5 more
Uh,
minutes, and I just
oh,
want to, again, I have a lot of new followers these days. Just want to
mhm.
explain one more time why we need second layer solutions instead of on-chain scaling. Just one more time, because clearly people aren't getting the message. And also, like, why do we entrust in our current system of core development? And even though we may not understand the details of lightning the way I don't understand the details of nuclear energy, and I still don't understand why the world uses nuclear energy, because when a reactor blows up, people all around it die. And yet we have a consensus that nuclear energy is good, and we entrust the nuclear scientists to build those reactors safely.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely details that are hard to grasp, even for a very experienced developer that's been in the space for a while. And like you have to do study. But I mean, the cost of free money or like free
Free
in the
storage.
sense, well, free money in the sense that it's free of state control, like like not free as in free beer, but like free as in freedom. The cost of having money that has freedom is eternal vigilance. You shouldn't blindly trust the core devs, but you should look at what they're doing. You should look at all of the peer review and stuff. And this is the thing, like core devs are not like a single monolithic entity, like some people like to say. It's a lot of different people, and they're constantly reviewing each other's code. There's more or less peer review in that regard, and not like one or two developers that get to set the roadmap like a lot of altcoins. But as far as the scaling thing goes, you can scale it on chain, and I'm glad that all the Bitcoin Cash people are doing whatever they're doing. I mean, they can go and try whatever they want. That's their right? Like I'm not going to force them to stay on something that they don't like. So I'm glad that they've forked off, right? I personally think that it's the laziest and stupidest way to scale. Especially given the volumes on Bitcoin Cash, where the average block size is like 67 kilobytes or something like that. Like they're using 1% of the capacity and thinking that it's a giant feature. Fine, like go try it. Let's see what happens. I'd much rather, as a technologist, have something like Lightning, which can get like many orders of magnitude more scale than 8x. And that to me is a better solution. But I mean, this is the thing: if you are somebody that's out there, you have a choice. You can do whatever you want, and you're not forced to stay on one or the other. And like go try whatever and see whatever it is that you want. I will say though that you have to think long term about this stuff and not short term. If you're continuously having to hard fork, that means you have a centralized development team, and that means that like that centralized development team at some point might just say, let's raise the 21 million limit. let's go and take Satoshi's coins away and give it to ourselves. And I'm not just saying that. The other hard forks have done exactly that, right? Like, so it's
give people their transactions back because they got scammed.
yeah. Let's bail these people out, right? Like, there's so many ways in which this could be bad, and that's personally something that I'm not willing to do, and that's not something that I want to be a part of. But if you want to be a part of it, that's your choice. You can go do it, and maybe you go try it, and you have all your coins taken away because somebody took over development or something like that. I don't know, like whatever it is that you want to do. All I know is that if you have centralization, your general like a lot of these altcoins have, you have some serious risk that happen really different.
It's okay. You got a little chaos in the background. I got you on last minute this morning.
Yeah. So anyway, I got to get going, but hopefully that cleared up some of the confusion. And I really don't like it when people, cherry pick like a little bit of what you say and like don't understand the context in which you said it. That to me is a little bit morally questionable. And journalists do that all the time. That's why I don't read the news, because I think most of the time they're taking things out of context and sensationalizing for the sake of sensationalizing something. You guys have to, this is why, having like these YouTube videos is very helpful, because you can see the entire context of something instead of just like cherry picking like 20 seconds and getting a good soundbite. If you're doing that, you're playing the game that you probably already despise, and that's the media game. And if you want to do that, great. Just don't expect me to pay attention to you.
All right, Jimmy. Thanks for coming on. I'll let you go. I will add a little bit more context to it, because the reason why you trust the core development process is very different than the reason why I trust the core development process, is because you have the ability to review the code and I don't.
Well, I mean, but you could still, I mean, there are hopefully people that you trust that review.
Well, that's the point. That's what I want to bring home, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like not only do I somewhat trust that the developers themselves are able to review each other's code, I also trust that there are people like yourself that I trust to review their code. And again, this goes back to my nuclear power plant argument. I have no capability of auditing their process to make sure that if I'm living within, death distance from this thing, if the reactor goes, why am I trusting myself to live there? It's the same kind of argument.
Yeah, and this gets into sort of like what trust really means, and what like a rational person should do with respect to it. But yeah, I mean, it's hard because we're all new to this sort of game. And it really is game theory. So you can think of it in that sense. So, but yeah, that's a more philosophical question, and I'm sure you'll talk about it in a very tone-based like way. So I'll let you get to it.
All right, Jimmy, I'll let you go. Thanks for coming on. I know you're probably busy Monday and Tuesday, so we might get you on later in the week. All right.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Later.
Bye.
Hey guys, so now you're gonna have just me. So again, I'm wearing my Don't Trust Verify shirt, but there's only so much you are, capable of verifying. One, there's not enough time in the world for you to verify everything. And two, you may not have the technical expertise to verify something. So when you don't have the technical expertise to verify something, you have to rely on people that you trust have a technical expertise to verify something. I mean, in some cases, you don't even go that far, right? Like why do all of you have a doctor that you do? Why do all of you go to a dentist that you go to, right? Like, how do you know that person is doing the right job? Did you check that person's qualifications? Did you Google them? Did you interview their former professors to know that they actually graduated at the top of their class, right? Nobody does that, right? So you entrust in people of, a technical expertise. Now, some people like to call this obedience to authority, And I think that's a play on words. I like to entrust in technical expertise. Now, I can kind of, I've gone to like, not that many doctors, but I've gone to enough doctors not to have an actual doctor. I don't really care. Like, it's I stay pretty healthy, so it's not that big a deal. Now, when I needed to get a root canal done, that was a big deal. I actually had to go through 3 dentists, and it was kind of messy because I kind of was an idiot. But and I ended up with like literally an expert. I'm not going to get into the details, but yeah, and it cost me a lot of money out of pocket and in cash. But he was basically the top of the line, and that's how I ended up there. But you entrust in technical expertise, so that brings us back to code. Now, at one time, I had the ability to review code, but those days are long gone. When I started on Wall Street, I used to write code, I used to look at code, but I hate code, right? So I entrust in other people to look at code. Now, the difference between core development and all other projects is that not only are there hundreds of people contributing code, there are even more hundreds of people reviewing that code. Okay. The other issue that you have is people that are trying to force you to do on-chain scaling don't understand the concept of consensus, and they seem to think that the world will bend to their will. And that's not the case here, right? Like, if you don't want to use Lightning, you don't have to use Lightning. You can use on-chain. If everyone else is using Lightning and you and a few friends are using on-chain, on-chain is going to be pretty cheap if that on-chain is using SegWit. You don't have to use SegWit. You can use the old formats of wallets with a 1 in front of them, and they'll be more expensive. But guess what? If everyone is using, if 90% of the world is using Lightning, and then the other 9% of the world is using, of the Bitcoin world, is using, native SegWit, then you, being the rebel that you are, by not updating anything since 2015, will still be able to use old school Bitcoin on-chain transactions, and they're probably going to be pretty cheap because you'll be the only fool still using dial-up internet while everyone else has moved on to fiber. Okay, and that's the point. The point is that when you have some of the brightest people that have come to their internal consensus after a long argument of how to scale, they've come to the best possible consensus of how Bitcoin could become this dominant, almost free, almost instant, potentially pretty fungible and anonymous value transfer. And I'm sorry that it's taking, a minute longer than you like. And I'm sorry that it's taking, that it's costing you $1 more to get there than you liked. But that's the reality of the situation, because if you push it, if you force it to your will, none of this will work, right? None of it will work. So that's the idea. So Jimmy has the ability, and he doesn't have the time, but he has the ability to review a lot of the code, not all the code. I'm sure some of that code is beyond his comprehension because there's always a better developer, right? So you just got to hope that there is enough really good developers. And guess what? If some genius developer tries to add something to the Bitcoin code that is amazing and revolutionary, but no one else actually understands it, it ain't getting in, because the other developers that will not let something go in that they don't understand, okay? This is where you have to entrust in this decentralized development structure of Bitcoin Core that has hundreds of developers, right? And the word trust here is misleading. You're not actually trusting any individual developer. You are trusting that the system design allows it to be trustless. And I know it sounds weird, but that's how you have to consider it. And you're right. I know very little about Lightning. I don't understand it. It's still in alpha. It's not even in beta, right? I've never used it. I don't fully understand it yet. But I know because I have set up a node. How many of you have set up a node, a Bitcoin node? Okay, this is where the confusion is going to come in. When a person says the word node, a year from now, what is it going to mean? Is it going to mean Lightning or is it going to mean Bitcoin? This is why I'm not a fan of this notation. I know from a technological standpoint, the word node makes sense in this context, but from a practical standpoint, from a layman standpoint, from getting grandma into Bitcoin, which I always thought was kind of silly, you can't just use the word in a year or two. I don't want to be in a situation where someone says the word node and you have to ask them, well, what do you mean? Bitcoin node? Lightning node? Something else that's going to come? Okay, so I'm hoping that the notation makes things a little more clear so that people understand, because setting up a Bitcoin node is not easy. It's not trivial. Now, I've done it. A lot of people have done it. I have 1,000 live viewers. How many of you have done it? How many of you have a functioning Bitcoin node running? If I had to guess, I'd say less than 10% of you. I'd say less than 100 people watching me right now out of 1,000 have a running Bitcoin node. And I'm not even sure my Bitcoin node is properly running because I had major problems setting it up. Maybe between my router, between where it's at. It's somewhere in the woods where my actual miner is. My miner is fully running. So that's good at least, right? But you don't need a Bitcoin node to run a miner. This is also something I didn't know when I was setting up my miner. When I was setting up my miner, I thought I needed to run a Bitcoin node and run my miner through that node. I had no idea. It was only after I set up both of them, I realized, hey, you know what? They don't really have to, it's not one and the same. I don't have to run a miner on my Bitcoin node, right? And you don't have to verify your own transactions, but you should, which is what a Bitcoin node does. Now, I still have a lot to learn about Lightning, but what I do know is that just like I entrust in the nuclear scientist to build the safest possible nuclear reactor that may or may not be not far from my backyard, I entrust in the Bitcoin core team to bring us the safest, the safest and most convenient way to scale Bitcoin to 1 billion people around the world. And that's why I support it. It's not a blind support. It's not obedience to authority. It's a look at expertise. And just like when I was on Wall Street, I actually hired a PhD that was smarter than me to work under me. I was scared that I may not work out for my career very well, but it worked out okay. Though I didn't stick around that company for all that much longer. But yeah, you entrust in the expertise, and if that expertise is failing you, then you got to make changes. But this is kind of how it works. Okay, so that's about it. And most people that are questioning the idea of Lightning and the idea of off-chain scaling have even less technical expertise than myself, and certainly Jimmy. Okay, so just keep that in mind when you watch people cherry pick parts of a video with absolutely no context, and meanwhile there is like hundreds and hundreds of hours of video that explain things to a greater degree. All right, so this was our wasn't as lightning of a talk about Lightning that I named the video on. I kind of really want these to be standalone. I don't want them to drag. I'm not going to take any questions. I want this video to be on the shorter side, but everyone is here. We have 1,000 people. I have to take a look at the Bitcoin price. I actually have not seen the Bitcoin price since I went to bed last night. I'm working, testing the code in order to try to release that any day now. You'd be surprised. Putting these numbers on these candles is actually not easy. I'll try and bring you another video later tonight, but right now the weekly chart is looking good. I would love to see us close 8 hours from now in somewhere near the top of the current weekly candle. On the daily side, we did close above all of our resistance. However, the current daily candle is back below, well, technically one of the points of the resistance, right? Because the setup trend line, the dotted line, actually disappears the moment a candle closes above it. So we no longer have 5 points of resistance. We now only have 4 points of resistance because one of them is no longer so. We have completed the cup and handle. So the $5,000 target is in play. I don't care about the lower volume. That is totally irrelevant to me. In fact, I'm happy about it that the volume on this handle was significantly smaller than the volume on this cup. I actually do think that prices should rebound and close a bit closer to 11,250 by end of day, closing our week near the top of the Fibonacci resistance at 11,300. But that's more of a guess than any kind of a technical signal. Now I want this to go higher before pulling back. I don't want to see a pullback back to the 50-day moving average. I don't want to see a smaller handle. I don't, but if it happens, it happens. That's not the end of the world, okay? The 4-hour chart is not very useful right now because it's been flat for the last, I don't know, 16 hours or so. And the hourly chart, again, I have not released the code with the aggressive 13s, but it called the top on the hourly fairly well. And once again, we are stuck in this range. So I think it's, I think a lot of traders right now are just trying to be absolutely sure that there is a Bitcoin breakout on the way. And if we can continue to close in the vicinity of 11,250 and 11,500, if we can continue to close in this area for another couple of days, I do see a monster breakout in the making, but still got to be careful. Let's see some volume on the breakout. That would be good. Maybe I should start talking a little more about volume, even though I really don't care, but other people seem to care. So I kind of almost forced to mention it. I am perfectly happy with decreasing volume because it boils up this energy for a breakout because of short covering and because of new buyers coming in. Okay. So we'll leave it here. I'll retitle the video. I'll throw something in the video description and check that out. Thank you, Jimmy, for coming on. And I'll see you all later today. I'm sure I'll be podcasting again. Let me turn on screen share, turn off screen share, wave bye to you guys. And I'll talk to you all on the next one. Tone out.